two security and compliance guys. You put them in the room, and we just kind of see what happens and what comes out of the conversation. Hello, David Stoicescu here, founder and CEO of Rovally.
Hello, my name is Ed Ramoin. I'm one of the VCs here over at Rovally.
Listen, this is super cool that we have an opportunity to do our first podcast together, Ed. I've done these before in other formats where we generally talk about a bunch of random things, and I don't know if this is really going to be any different. And I very much like the ad hoc approach to just having a conversation when it comes to security. Two security and compliance guys, you put them in the room, and we just kind of see what happens and what comes out of the conversation. I do have some things that are just like on my mind when it comes to compliance, things that you and I see every day with our clients. We see it with our team that I do want to dig into. And that's particularly shaped around AI compliance. But before we get into that, I think it's only fair that we just talk a little bit about what Rovally does and kind of how we support our clients. So I'll go ahead and open this up by saying, hello, David here. I've been in the security game now for over 2 years, over 2 decades rather. And we, or at least my career, have kind of served in all types of roles, starting my career in help desk and eventually landing as a 3-time CISO. And several years ago, I had the bright idea of starting my own company, creating a cybersecurity and compliance as a service model where we kind of have these forward deployed engineers that are inside the customer environment. We have access to all the things, and we support our clients by creating their compliance program with as little effort from them as possible. And simply the reason that we do that is because we want to create space for them to focus on building their product, on shipping code, on enabling their sales organization, and ultimately creating revenue. So we want it to be as close to that as possible, and that's what we built. And I want to introduce Ed Ramoin to this conversation. Ed is not just VCISO, but he's also head of client advisory. Wicked smart, an awesome addition to the team here of recent. And I'm looking to pick Ed's brain on some particular topics, again, based on what we've seen and based off of kind of what's going on in the industry as well. So Ed, tell us a little bit about your background and why the heck you got into compliance, man. Because sometimes, I'll be honest with you, I don't even know why. Here I am.
Thank you for the kind words, David. I really appreciate it. A little bit about me. My background spans a few decades, and sort of similar to David, I've actually started in the developer side of things and went into infrastructure, and finally I moved into the GRC space. It's a good question to ask. What made me get into all these different security frameworks? I think the answer is really simple. When you are doing the infrastructure, you hear people always say, we use the best practices. Has anyone ever thought about what are those best practices and where do they come from? They actually come from all these different frameworks. It is a agreed upon set of controls, depending on your organization, that one must follow. So it's not somebody, a very bright individual saying, I think I should put this type of identity access management control in or what have you. We at Rovally will help you guide an organization to adopt the best practices through proper frameworks.
Yeah. I'm glad that you kind of opened up with that, Ed, because, we've seen this, right? We've seen this in the industry. And what I'm referring to is, hey, like, these are the requirements from a compliance perspective. Like, this is what you have to do. And I think part of what makes Rovally interesting and exciting and why we keep getting referred to by our customers is that we don't take that approach. We take the approach of, hey, like, what kind of business are you? Where are you located? Who do you work with? What technologies? What teams do you have in place? And here's how to interpret these requirements, whether it's SOC 2, whether it's ISO, HIPAA or whatever, and say, okay, like, here's how we would do this in your environment. and matching that up with your risk appetite, your risk tolerance, and so on and so forth. Um, so I'm curious, um, does that model align with what you've seen, when it comes to auditors, when it comes to audits? I mean, you've been doing this for a long time.
So it does and it doesn't. And here's what I mean by that. A traditional firm will help you or will guide you through the audit process. Rovally, the differentiator is we become part of your team. We're embedded. Now, there's different ways you could feel about that, but we're literally working with you. And when you think about, I need to ask my security individual what they need to do, you're not thinking Rovally, you're thinking, I have my security department.
Yeah.
We don't make a specific line. We blur those lines. We become part of your organization. So that is not traditional. And that's where the value really comes from Rovally of here are all these services. I've seen different organizations go through the different growth stages of a company.
Mm-hmm.
And they have very similar traits at times. And sometimes, we have a really good team and sometimes they have a great team. It really depends. But that's where, going through all the different experiences that I've had and you've had where we could bring it on in and help guide that client to stay away from different areas.
Yeah. Let's kind of pivot a little bit and talk about something that we see quite a bit with startups. And let's talk about checkbox compliance. I mean, it's real, right? And we've onboarded customers that, and listen, it's hard to tell, right? When we onboard somebody, like what is really going on until we get into the onboarding phase and we're like, oh, okay. And let's talk about checkbox compliance. We hear that all the time. And like I certainly have my opinions of what checkbox compliance is. And we're aware of the incident with Delve. I think anybody listening to this is. And I would say I'm not just going to characterize everyone who uses Delve as checkbox compliance, but certainly the vendor was, and there was a lot of shenanigans going on behind the scenes in terms of like, let's just make the process as simple as possible and make the audit as simple as possible. And the controls, right, like that they created, like these companies created, were like nothing, right? Like nothing stood up on its own. It was all vaporware. So surely, like somebody within that environment could have raised a flag and said, "We don't actually do any of these things. Like these things are like they're not real." For instance, let's give a practical example. Like we do background checks for all of our employees and contractors, which is kind of like a common thing. Like you would know if you're working for that company responsible for their compliance program, if those things are happening, right? Mobile device management or device encryption, like you would know if those things are actually happening or if you're just fabricating evidence. Like how are you passing an audit, even if you're not fabricating the evidence? Like how are you passing the audit, right, without producing that evidence? So like there's definitely a level of fishiness. And I think that's a little bit around kind of the Delve example. But I'm curious, Ed, like what are some of the things that you've seen with organizations that are doing checkbox compliance? Like what does that mean to you, and how has that hindered them from actually being able to scale their security and compliance program?
Well, it's a shame that this does go on in the industry, and people are caught by the get SOC 2 in 7 days. Well, if you're not an expert or you're not in the industry, you hear SOC 2. You hear your peer saying, oh, I have my SOC 2 attestation, but you don't realize what they actually went through. Yep. When you hear that, let's get the SOC 2 in X days, where's that little asterisk? If you have this, that, and what have you. Right. That's the catch. Everyone has to do the work.
Yeah.
Granted, yes, you have some firms that will be far more lenient. However, as you correctly said, if someone were to come on in and you have your own team for doing GRC or security, they will catch these things pretty straightforward, because we all have to remember that when you're going through an attestation, you're going to be judged upon your documentation. If your docs say you do X, Y, and Z, then it's free game.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts.
So listen, this is a disclaimer here. We've actually helped organizations, several of them, get their SOC 2 type 1 within 30 days. Um, do I like doing those? Absolutely not. Is it a heck of a lot of work? 1,000,000%. But there's also a huge caveat. Like, these organizations are tiny. We're talking,
Hmm.
5, 6, 10 people, and we show up and we're like, listen, you've got to deploy these 17 controls. Oh, and by the way, like, we have the tools and resources to do a lot of those things for you. But like, here's the stuff that you have to do. Like, we can do all the IT stuff, MDM, EDR, et cetera. But like, here's the stuff you got to do in your cloud infrastructure, when it comes to your code repo. Here's certain processes and procedures. Now, here's the problem, right? Here's the problem. And like, this is a hot take, right? I think a lot of people can bulldoze their way into a SOC 2 Type 1. They can just expend a heavy amount of resources to implement a bunch of controls. But this is where things fall apart. They can't actually follow through with the controls that they've said they'll do. And we've seen that. And that's a struggle because like we'll get on the phone and sometimes even best intentions with even some of our own customers. We're like, hey, listen, you got to remember, like, you agreed to all of these things that are in these policies. We're expecting your HR team to be doing those things, right? And I think that's part of the value add that Rovally has. And we understand that, some of our prospects have no idea what any of this stuff is. So we're here to educate, we're here to enlighten, we're here to hold folks accountable and to say, hey, listen, like, you agreed to these things. We're not seeing them happening before it's too late, right? Before you get to the audit and the auditors come back and they're like, hey man, what the heck happened? You've got a qualified report, you've got all these different findings, which is no good. So working with the customer and saying, we gotta write this, this particular thing needs to move in this new direction. And we see these aha moments all the time. So my worry is that more companies than not, Ed, are implementing these security controls and they're implementing these policies, and absolutely nobody's following them.
Yeah, I completely agree with you in that it goes back to one of my statements, the belief that one could obtain a attestation for type 1, type 2, or even a type 3 is a different story. But for type 1, once the leadership of that organization agrees to these
Mm-hmm.
policies, you must make good.
Yeah.
It is one thing to obtain your type 1. Great, you did it. Congratulations.
Yeah.
But they have to realize the type 2, now there's going to be a review of the next X months or a year, what have you, however long you want it to have, to ensure that you are saying what you do.
Yeah.
And that is the catch, as you're highlighting. And it's one thing to obtain templatized documents.
Right.
Great, you have a document. You have to live it.
Yeah. I think this brings me to a really interesting, I think, kind of realization. Listen, I've been thinking about this for a while, but I think now that we're talking about this topic, it's kind of like it's culminating into like putting some words together. And that is to say that our best customers, meaning the customers that have their program buttoned up and the security team is doing what they're supposed to and the engineering team are doing what's supposed to, are the ones that have a really strong security culture at the
Mm-hmm.
executive level, right? And maybe this is too hot a take, and maybe I'm a little out there, but like, I don't know, maybe what are your thoughts on this? And this is me just kind of also speaking from my CISO experience, these various like, VC backed companies that I worked for. I think that if you've got strong security culture, and what that means is like, hey, we have to do these things and we will hold you accountable as an executive team if you don't. I think if you've got that in place, like, things are going to work out pretty well for you. And you'll find that, like, because of that, you'll end up hiring the right people. You'll end up having the right kind of policies within your program and the right set of controls. The right things are happening. When you don't have those things, it's like a trickle down
Mm-hmm.
approach. It's like, I forget the saying, it's like, the cat's away, the mouse will play, right?
Yeah, I like to, I guess one word I use that for is discipline. You must be disciplined to continue doing it. It's saying, yes, we want to obtain a SOC 2 or get a certification in some framework. Great. You could get the first year, but it's even to get that first year, you need the discipline to carry through with it. And I do agree with you. If management has the mindset of having a security mindset, if you will,
Hmm.
things are better. But I would say for those that are, listening here, we don't want to scare you that SOC 2 is this difficult thing to obtain. It is obtainable. And one has to remember that the controls are what the business makes. And
Yeah.
that is an important thing to remember. There are different controls that you have to meet, but no one is saying exactly you have to do X, Y, and Z. This is where the business, when you're young, you make the controls obtainable. As you mature those controls. So at Rovally, we will find that right fit for you.
Yeah. I think another telltale sign that things might potentially go off the rails is, like, I've had conversations with prospects that kind of go one of two ways. The first way is, hey, we need help building this program, running it, and we understand the value that Rovally brings in being the operators, like once the program is built, because we understand that security is work and it's extremely nuanced, right? Security and compliance is extremely nuanced, and maintaining the program is not as easy as implementing and running a GRC platform. There's a bunch of great platforms, but it's not as easy as just buying the software and then waiting for the software to do things,
Correct.
right? Like,
Yeah, if
and
I
that,
may interject, that's probably the most important point in today's discussion. You could buy a piece of software. It is not going to auto-configure itself. So there is the cost of the application. Then there's the cost of actually becoming conformant to the framework that you're seeking.
yeah, well, then there's like the platform is going to tell you to implement all these things in your environment. Like somebody has to do them.
Mm-hmm.
So like the platform is not going to be holding those people accountable, and surely will not invent the evidence for you. Well, in case some software. Okay, all right. All joking aside, the other conversation that I've had is like, hey, we need to get SOC 2 because of like this enterprise prospect is helping us, and like, and then like we're kind of done, right? That's really all we need from you. And I think if I can't educate those particular prospects as to why compliance is important and it's actually like a lifelong thing that they need to be
Mm-hmm.
continue to doing, that is that is just not a good fit for us. And we've seen that, right? Like they're just like, we just want the report and we want to get out the other side. And they'll be totally fine. Like, we'll it's like they'll come in and they'll be like on a steady diet of like lean proteins and good fats and vitamins and all this stuff. And as soon as they leave, they're just like, okay, we got the badge, we got the cert, and like things completely fall apart because
Mm-hmm.
there's no stakeholders to say, I've got the stick, right? Like we own the security compliance stick and like these things must be done. There's no ownership. And especially at a startup, if there's no ownership, there's no accountability. Like things just aren't getting done and they're just continuously falling through the cracks until that next enterprise buyer comes along and says, not just like show me your cert, but like, we have these like 97 million questions to understand what is going on with your product or service, and show us the evidence. Like we've seen that more and more and more. And I think this kind of leads me into what I wanted to talk about on this call today, which was everybody's got an AI something. AI this, AI this, AI this. So what enterprise buyers are doing, well, they're ratcheting things up. They want to know what you're doing behind the scenes. And more importantly, it's like, cool story, bro. You've got a SOC 2, but we want to see the evidence of a fruitful program behind the scenes.
Yeah. It, you know, going back to the previous topic real quick, just to make a comment on that. Once you go down the SOC 2 routes, you have to maintain it. There's actually from my experience, a very well-known HRS vendor out there that a lot of people use. They had its SOC 2 Type 1 for over a year. And for those that don't know, part of the SOC 2 process, when you have a vendor come on board, you have to do a vendor assessment, evaluate the risk. I actually had to ask them, like, where's your Type 2? It's been over a year. What's happening? And just because you have a Type 1, great, but everyone's looking for that SOC 2 Type 2. So when somebody says, I have my SOC 2, what they're referring to is, where's your SOC 2 Type 2? Where a firm has gone through and has reasonable assurance that you've met all the criteria for the SOC 2 Type 2 process. As far as AI, yes, there are a lot of things that are happening in that world. And there is, as we all know, AI is being adopted quickly to start developing as a primary resource. And one of the things I've been seeing is that how do each organizations vet the code that has been produced? Can they actually understand the code? And what is their approval process? I know that doesn't answer your question, David, but maybe we could start from there.
Yeah, and let me just add a quick note to your previous comment. For those that are new in the room, the SOC 2 Type 1 is really just a point in time audit that just describes, hey, like we've we've documented how we will run our compliance and security program. We've put that on paper, and then we've implemented all the different tools and controls and processes to ensure that those things are true. And then the auditors come in and they verify those things and they say, yeah, you've implemented all of the policies, processes, procedures, and controls to satisfy what you said you would do. A SOC 2 Type 2 is much more difficult in that you now have to prove over a period of time that you've actually been doing those things. So let me give you a very simple example that's black and white. If you say that you will do background checks for all of your staff and the control period is 6 months, meaning from the Type 1 to the Type 2, 6 months has elapsed, the auditors will look back over that 6-month period. They'll say, who have you hired? And you'll say, well, we've hired 35 people. And they'll say, okay, show me that you've done a background check for these 7 random people that we've selected, and you must provide that evidence. And if you've said that you'll do it within 24 hours or 48 hours or 7 days, you have to demonstrate that you've done it within that period. And so why does that matter? It matters because if you don't, that ends up being an exception. The exception is documented in your Type 2 report, and that's something that's shared to prospects. And then your prospects are going to sit there scratching their head, and they're going to say, hey, listen, why didn't you do these things? It makes it look like your security program is not put together. If you can't do the simple things, what gives us a reasonable level of assurance that you can do the difficult things, like SLAs and vulnerability management and pen testing and like having logging and alerting, so that our data as the customer or your prospect is actually safe in your hands. So it's very important that folks understand the difference between these two things and what a real SOC 2 Type 2 actually means for your business and your business opportunity if you do it right.
Yep. And the one thing to add, we've discussed SOC 2 Type 1, Type 2, and I kind of alluded to the Type 3. For those that have never heard of a Type 3, how you get a Type 3 is you must have your Type 2. The difference between a Type 2 and Type 3, very simple. I'm trying to break it down in layman terms as possible. The Type 3 is more for your marketing, if you will, your sales folks of they need to provide something to your client without an NDA. Here's a Type 3 report. It'll tell you that you've obtained your SOC 2 Type 2, you have a positive attestation, but you don't have to really worry that all the different data flows are being exposed, what have you. That's where your Type 2 comes on in, and where you potentially want an NDA in front first.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, every auditor we've ever worked with requires that you only share them under NDA. So that's 100% a thing. So let's talk about AI, right? Gosh, I would say like 80% of our clients are doing AI something, are involved in AI, use AI providers. And gosh, I'll be honest with you, I have a love-hate relationship with AI. It surely provides a lot of value, and even saves us a lot of work, but I'm just seeing this slow shift to, like, pay-per-use. Like, we saw it a little bit with Fable, and then it kinda, like, went away because, it got shut down, but, like, I think that's just a sneak preview. If you wanna be using the latest and greatest models, you gotta pay per use. That's maybe a topic for another time, but just a bit of a "I told you so." I mean, we all kind of saw it coming from a mile away.
Well, I could
So
see at the other side of it for a KYC, know your customer. There are some positives for that, but yeah, it would be nice to still be around.
yeah. So, we've been seeing a lot of our customers increase the velocity of pushing out code because they're using AI, right? They're using Claude, they're using Codex, they're using whatever. And the issue is just kind of one of the standard controls for SOC 2 is ensuring that your code isn't just roguely pushed out by people on your engineering team. You've got some sort of control in place to say it's being reviewed by somebody else to make sure that it meets
Hmm.
various security, availability, confidentiality. Insert requirement here, it's not going to break the app. It's not going to break access. It's not going to compromise security. And traditionally, that has required human eyes, right? By somebody who is a peer within your engineering team to look at that code. So the struggle is that the customers just have like a ton of these PRs sitting around, and teams can't move fast enough to review them.
Yeah, I mean, there's some wonderful tools out there to help through the CI/CD pipeline process and reviewing code. But bottom line, it goes to how much does the organization want to accept on risk?
Yeah.
What is a standard approval for code? What is must have approval for, or excuse me, what must have a set of human eyes actually review the code itself and understand, does it meet all the different criteria that was requested in a user story? It is a growing problem, but I think Rovally is lucky enough where we have clients that are actually meeting it and doing what they say, and really ingenious.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will also add that we've been working with our auditors to try to understand, the requirements, especially from a SOC 2 perspective, because I would say it's the gate really to a lot of other controls across multiple frameworks. We surely, like, we talk about SOC 2 a lot, because it's the primary framework, especially here in the States, but we do a lot of work with ISO and GDPR, CCPA, HIPAA, CMMC. But SOC 2 kind of seems to be at the nerve and at the center of everything, which is why we kind of talk about it
Hmm.
quite a bit. And I think probably the most descriptive, and I think well established across auditors in terms of what they expect to see, right, as satisfactory evidence for any particular common criteria. And um, one of the things we've been working on with our customers is saying, okay, like, you're trying to push code faster. Um, let's figure out a way that you can do that without impacting your security, your availability, your confidentiality, processing integrity, privacy of your application or service. And I just want to spend a little bit of time kind of talking with you, Ed, and just picking your brain around what is, like, despite what auditors are willing to accept or not accept, like, where is the bar? I think, in your opinion, in terms of, I think these class of changes can probably get approved by some other AI or by some other robust process or technology or control that exists within the organization. But this class of things, like, it does need human eyes. And then I think, to kind of dig into that even a little bit more, are they actually being reviewed?
It's a great question, and I hate to give this answer, but it depends. And I say it depends and kind of chuckle at the same time. Is it really just depends on the organization. SOC 2 is, as we've been speaking about this whole time, mainly, it is achievable at a station to obtain. And it really depends on what industry each one of our clients, or for those that are listening, what you're going after. If, let's say, you're trying to be in a fintech world, what needs human eyes is going to be far different than what potentially in a firm or excuse me, an organization that requires a HIPAA attestation. Or if you're doing something in Europe, does it meet the spirit of GDPR? So it really depends on what needs human eyes, depending on the industry that you're going to go in.
Yeah.
Let me pick on the fintech. And for that, a fintech can go after a SOC 2. A fintech can also potentially go after a PCI certification. And if they're seeking a PCI and such, you're looking at cardholder data, encryption, all those different little, even though they're significant items, in my perspective, they should have a human eye to review that the encryption is in place, the rows are being properly encrypted, there's logical separation, and so forth. So really, I guess, David, it really depends on the organization. What are your thoughts on this?
I think it does 100% depend on the organization. It depends on that organizational culture. Again, I'm just gonna have to come back to that. I'll be honest with you, because if the culture isn't there, you can implement whatever control you want, and you know, people are just gonna be people, and they're just gonna try to push stuff and
Mhm.
get on with their merry lives and get on with their jobs. And it's rather unfortunate. So, um, I'm not speaking with an auditor hat at because I'm not an auditor. We understand what auditors expect to see, but like here's kind of my thinking, Ed. If I ran a development shop and I wanted to push code, and like maybe let's just say I had a bit of a weaker posture from a culture perspective in terms of folks really being diligent, because those folks also have to be held accountable, right? 'Cause if you're going to say, hey, you got to review the code, there's certain requirements that come alongside with that, and their managers are going to be holding them accountable. Like, but let's
Mhm.
just say hypothetically, like that's not the case. What I would probably focus on is ensuring that at a minimum, I have additional safeguards and controls in place. So like maybe additional tooling, or maybe additional scanners, or validators to basically say, this is what I think this class of changes that's trying to be pushed, and like we've at least run it through all of these automated tests, right? So even if you are automatically just pushing them through to production without human eyes, at least you've got some tech, you've got like some saving grace to try to minimize the blast radius should something go wrong. Now, I don't recommend that, but if you don't have the culture pieces in place, like forget compliance for a second. We're just talking about having a highly available and secure product, right?
Mhm.
I would at least focus on those types of integrations uh, into your pipeline.
Yeah, it reminds me, and I know I've said this to you before, David. The book "Good to Great." First who, then what? If you don't have the right team, if you don't have that right culture, as you're saying, you're going to create a kind of a world of hurt for you.
Yeah.
The attestation certification process doesn't just end when you obtain your first positive attestation or certification. That's
Hmm.
when it begins, and it's you hit it squarely on the head of what are those criterias. For me, it's one of those things that I kind of expect the engineering team to bring on in. Um, it's kind of why I was thinking it's like first who. If you have a solid engineering team, and we've seen some of our clients have a rock star level
Amazing.
team, it's they are asking us questions like, "Hey, what's going on here?" They
Mhm.
ask vendors the tough questions that do not meet their criteria, which is outstanding. It reinforces your belief and your point of you have to have the right culture.
Yeah. Yeah. Culture is 100% the criteria to having a very strong team, having yeah, have like, and again, I mean, now that I'm thinking about this, Ed, I'm recalling these organizations that have the strong teams. You know what else I noticed about them? They have strong budgets too. And what I mean by that is when they understand the risk associated with what they're doing, they're more apt to say, "Hey, listen, we've got to make the right investments in SIM. We've got to make the right
Hmm.
investment in email security." Like, they're not okay with the baseline minimum of like what is required to like maybe pass compliance. They're just like, "Hey, we want to be like in the 90th percentile or whatever." And that's amazing when we hear that from our customers.
No, completely right. They're teams with larger budgets and or being frugal in how they spend their funds this definitely plays a role. There's nothing wrong with having a small budget. Each organization is different. However, it's easier said than done, if you will, for a startup to go, okay, I want to have a SOC 2. I need to have an MVP coming out the door. Which one wins? And there's
Mhm.
different ways to tackle the problem. If you have, again, I count on my engineering teams to hold me accountable, to tell me what's true or not. But if the engineering team has a larger budget than the security side of the house, if you will, it means they're going to have the tooling, and we could practice a more of a shift left mindset of you catch all the different vulnerabilities before they even make it out to production.
Yeah.
And then in time, the security and or the GRC side of the house, if you were to
Mhm.
bring it in-house, can have more mature tools. But Rovally will help you find those correct tools, the right size, what you need.
Yeah.
It's it just because I don't know, a Fortune 100, 500 organization has a sledgehammer doesn't mean you can afford it. It means you start with the little
Yeah,
pick.
and listen, it's not even about affording it. It's like, is it practical and pragmatic given your
Hmm.
stage, your
Yeah.
your footprint, right? So we kind of do this like crawl, walk, run approach with our customers, where you're a tiny startup, you're seed, pre-seed or whatever, you're getting started. We're going to implement the basics. You got a very small footprint, you got a very small budget, and that pragmatic approach is going to give you the things that provide the biggest bang for your buck. And as you continue to grow and scale and pull in more cash or revenue, if things go according to plan, of course, start to dial things up and get better and stronger controls as you get more visibility in the market space and you have more people knocking on the door in terms of trying to get in, right?
Right.
They're trying to compromise your users or what have you. So that's the approach. Because listen, I I would I would caution that, and I've seen this as well. We've seen the inverse of this, Ed. Companies that have very strong culture and leadership, right? They understand security. They're like ex practitioners themselves, whatever, and they're throwing everything at once, kitchen sink, day zero. And we're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, you are way overcomplicating things
Hmm.
out the jump and creating a lot of unnecessary friction that's not enabling your business to move fast and get things
Yeah.
done.
That's the beautiful word, friction. The more friction you put in, it's the harder it's going to be. And there is a way to bring in a SOC 2 or governance into an organization without feeling that friction. We're all humans. We all don't like change. I get it. But for organizations that are thinking about the SOC 2 route or an ISO certification route, uh, it's growing pains as I see it. And the sooner you adopt it, the sooner you actually could live it and act it. The smaller organization, in my personal thoughts, the sooner you could actually adopt it, the less opinions you'll have of getting approval around the org.
Yeah.
Um, the larger you get, the far more difficult it can be because now you have to have everyone agree. And going back to our AI topic, it's like all these tools, I absolutely love using AI. And it allows a resource to pretty much be 10x. If you use it correctly, you're
Mhm.
going to get more bang for your buck. However, now we're going back to the GRC or security space. How do you ensure company intellectual property is not being given out? How do you ensure that PII or PHI, cardholder data, et cetera, are not seeping out through different areas of, tools because a resource needs to get an answer, which is 100% justified. So it's a dance we have to do to right size a solution, put the proper controls, and not bring the sledgehammer in when day zero of an organization,
Yeah.
because that's all. all that's going to do is slow you down.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, Ed. And listen, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. And I will say a topic for the next conversation, and I'm not even sure this is a good idea because I don't know if people are like really willing to hear this, is that these AI tools have access to everything, right? And they have a compliance program in it of themselves, right?
Mm.
Who's to say they're doing the right things and they're protecting your data um, as they should or as you would expect? Um, I would hate to see the day where one of these AI providers gets popped and someone finds some sort of meaningful way, probably leveraging their own software, to surface confidential, restricted data from a ludicrous amount of companies. I mean, it's like it would be the compromise of just all time, right? And I think it's 100%. We're like one keystroke away from something like that being possible, and folks are just kind of hoping that they're so tiny and small, like they're just going to be a needle in a very large haystack, and no one's going to come after them.
Yeah, but when you put them into a larger pot, as you're saying, all the different AI houses out there so far,
Mhm.
one one good event could do a lot of damage.
Yeah, and I thought, ironically, Ed, I think it's probably going to be like using their own software against them.
For another episode.
Yeah, for another episode. Thank you so much, Ed, for taking some time to chat with me today. Looking forward to chatting with you again soon.
Thank you.